didn't hear so many frogs this week. And I was thinking maybe we're making progress. Maybe the frogs stop chirping and they start getting activated. And then I realized all the frogs are now out of the pond. They're in the garden area. And the crickets are still playing. And some things that happened this week that were kind of interesting. Well, beyond the fact that I almost lost one of my systems, I was trying to do a backup right before that, trying to be smart about doing an update, and then the update actually killed the system. That was fun. But I'm starting to pay attention now a little bit. I'm trying to figure out things. Why do we as a people allow and continue to allow on a mass scale? Again, there's a lot of people working, but there's a lot of people that are working, but they're not really focused on the more proper things to do. And I say that from an experience that I've been having over the last 10 years of things that are working, even though they're slow. It's just almost a physics condition. Spirit, if you will, the idea happens in a flash. The mass, the energy, the light happens quickly. It travels fast. But the mass, any mass, it takes a little longer for it to manifest. That I've been noticing over and over, people are really settled on looking out at what the horror is, what they've identified a thing. They've identified this enemy out there that's just whatever they've made it out to be, and we are, and I see this generally, we are so focused on that we haven't put that into context, that we're forgetting that we are the ones that make that change. We are that power. I was just reminded of another court case, and it says right in the court case that the sovereignty remains in the people. And this was brought to me because of our lawsuit, saying, when we found out there is no real government, it really isn't established anymore like we thought it was, and we proved it. Where does law go if the institutions don't recognize any? And I've told you this about the NDAA and the memo justifying the extrajudicial lack of law imposition on everybody's life, and the institution, the recognition by that thing, those people that are using a framework of establishment that's in your perception to believe that they have an authority to say that there is no law and we're battlefield America. That I'm noticing that we're focusing on the enemy, if you will, and it's a perceptive enemy at one level. All this thing we look at in the government is really just a setup. It's a fabrication that we've agreed, to some extent, we've agreed that the establishment of the government was a good thing, and that whatever comes out of it's supposed to be the good thing, and yet it was overtaken. And we were there. We were supposed to be there to stop it, being and responsible. This is why I get back to this international law. You're responsible as the people, given that, and this is like a notice to us. As I keep telling you, all these news and all this and these legal things are notices to somebody, whether it's to you within your jurisdiction, whether the 5 jurisdictions that they can attach to you or not. These are notices, and I've got to explain that a little clearer. The statutes are really that's the guideline to those in the state that they're speaking to. Now, whether or not you're in the state matters upon whether or not you've taken steps to be in that state, or there's been a wholesale route of any limitation. And as I've said before, without a cell wall, the breaking down of all borders, you then have no borders, and then you have no state. You have just a tyranny, because there's no notice of limitation, or we've forgotten the limitation. And we were, as I try to show you in the news here, but we're just using the news and the stories, the breaking down of these things is evidence to us that we can use in our dealings. That if we focus on the enemy that we think we see, instead of realizing there is that enemy, but it's not your object. That your object is to identify that you're in the war. You're in a battlefield, admit to it, and then now you stop and you think about this not in a reactive sense, but in a contemplative sense. You think about this, and as I tell you, withdraw and rethink your condition, your position. And at some point, I don't know of many people that actually start to look at this, that can say that they don't live in a tyranny of sorts. Whatever, and that's a hard thing, because whatever you think is a tyranny may not be what I think. It's like one man's junk is another man's treasure, or women. And so this becomes a little bit of a discussion, but ultimately, if you're still, depending on the gradation, if you're still in the class of oppression, so whatever you think is it's a light oppression or a heavy, there's still an oppression. If you live under fear, intimidation, and dread, you live in a government of terrorism. We've identified all this. But to focus on the figment, the fabrication, the institution, the framework, instead of what it's doing, is, I think, defeating us. It becomes one of those things that you can't. What do you do about this monster you have nothing to do? Well, you can't do anything about it. It's like I'd say, I can't solve all the problems of the world. So what we have to do is, what I've had to do is I've had to do things I can do, find out what I can do, find out what the condition is, rethink where I'm at in that condition, and just admit to the fact, because of my experience, I'm only able to talk through my experience. And this is decades of reading and researching and thinking and acting and going to the courts and seeing how they abuse you and understanding and not getting lost in the abuse, finding out what that is and how they do it, and learn the weapons you need in the future if you go back after it, which I have, and some of the people I know do. We go and we use these experiences, experientials, as training to go back at them to the point that, folks, I mean, I just tell you, you have to understand how huge this is, that the people that, the Bar Association, the political parties, and the legislative councils in a state and a governor would not answer a complaint. You have to understand this is what it takes to get you into that ballpark is quite a big deal, but it wasn't looked at by saying, oh, what do I do about the government? What do I do about this thing? It's so big and powerful. They got all the guns, or I'm only one little one. Well, you are one little one, and I tell you that makes you more powerful. And you just need to focus and make that important, that eventually you come to an awareness that we apply. We don't focus. When we went after this, we didn't focus on the state. In fact, we're coming in and protecting that state. We're protecting what was the best parts of what we would all talk about of the Republican form of representative government. That doesn't make it, again, I'm not saying that it's all perfect. Obviously, it can't be perfect because we're here today. So let's get all that straightened up. But we didn't approach this, and I have not, a long time now, have not approached any of this by worrying about what that fiction, that institution is, and what all the corrupt parts of it are saying as an authority to diminish what I do. I just find what I need to do where I'm at. I do not focus on the question of what do you do about this big monstrous thing. That's not the way to approach this. But I'm noticing, and I'm listening, I'm trying to listen very carefully, because, I really don't know sometimes how efficacious the time I'm spending here is. I know lots of people listen, and thank you for the emails and support and contributions that I don't get to sometimes, but they're part of what I say. Hopefully you can hear that in what I'm talking to. I'm trying to bring that there's at least in my experience, there's ways to get at this. And it doesn't, more and more openings are made when you do this as well. So that's where you're almost it's almost, what can I say? You're given stuff beyond what you could approach. I can't do all that I see can be done. And this is part of my frustration when I'm hearing the crickets. I tell you, there's a target-rich environment out there. This is really, that's the success that we're just not taking advantage of, that you don't see if you start saying, oh, what am I going to do about the big bad government? No, you just go in and what you think you can do. And not everybody can do what I do or what I think I do, and that's fine. I just want to say, just find the right you need to make wrong and go after that. Focus, and you can make that as small a wrong that you want to right as you possibly want to think you can be successful out. And I would just suggest don't underestimate what you actually can do. You can do quite a bit. But whatever it takes to get you back into the game, because that's required. Given that sovereignty remains in the people, you have the ultimate responsibility. And as I've been trying to advocate, because this revolution that keeps going round and round, where we let out of the barrel of the gun, the Second Amendment, that just is never really, I know it's there. It's the final solution to a final question, and then you better be able to answer that question with that tool. You live by the sword, die by the sword. That's the rule there. And I've been looking and saying, well, that keeps repeating itself. Maybe that's not the revolution, the wheel we want to be on. That maybe we just need to learn the better awareness. And part of that is to not necessarily go there, and you can see that really quickly. As I was writing an email to somebody who was I get a little irritated sometimes about people saying, they talk about this martial law to come and what will happen and all this, and it just irritates me. You don't even see the forest for the trees. You don't understand it in many different capacities. We are in a martial law condition. I've explained all that to y'all. It's not just that. There's lots of other oppressions and occupations that we could identify. But are we going to get lost in the fact of their existence, or are we going to say, wait a minute, okay, all right, I was supposed to be a lot more vigilant than this. I need to do something. Well, I don't know what that might be, but I'm going to have to do something, and I'm going to have to figure it out. So I've come to more of a better realization, I hope, as to what we can do to help ourselves, is to understand, don't fixate on the enemy, fixate on what you want to see the world to be, and understand you're in battlefield America. Admit to it. Don't deny it. Don't try to deny it away. And then you say, okay, here I am. I'm really naked. I'm power. I have no weapons that I know of at this point. I'm in the middle of a battlefield. I don't know the terrain. But what? Okay, so my choice is: do I submit, or do I give it? The old college try, if you will. Even those of us that, well, those of you that haven't gone through college, and those of us that found out that it was just a big scam anyway. So much so that we see so-called experts coming out of these universities, and these higher education is another one of the code words for elite and special place-based society and community, contrary to your way of life. But we didn't understand all that. That we have to make that choice. Do we succumb, or do we understand the battlefield we're in as almost hopeless as it seems, and do we prevail anyway? And so, when I started into all this, I never thought about it this way. I'm just trying to figure out ways to educate the idea, communicate the idea, get through an idea that, because I know I can't do it by myself. And it hasn't been by myself what we have done. I'm in allying and in league with people that are all on the same path, we're in the same battlefield at this moment, in the same place, looking at the same terrain, and we all have different capacities, and we're coming together. And that started to come together when we decided we weren't going to succumb. We decided what it was we thought we wanted to see changed, and despite that oppression. And we didn't say, oh, well, look at how big the government was. We looked at what that government looks to be, the illusion of it. And we went back and we found out what we thought was so that wasn't, and we fixed that for ourselves. And then we moved on with the better understanding of what that terrain was about. And this is just a matter of applying yourself at whatever level. That I just wanted to convey to anybody who's listening or will listen. In all of these things, it seems that we're fixating it is an obsession, obsessively, on the enemy, this thing out there, instead of saying, well, that thing has a causation and an effect that is not good. It's not good. And that's a subjective thing maybe, but I think inherent in us is that ability to know. I mean, this is at some point, and when we grow up, we know we shouldn't have done something when we done it, and we didn't need to be told we shouldn't have been doing it. That's what we're relying on today, in a more wise sense, hopefully, in a more aware sense. That the awareness has to be that we have to move this thing from the barrel of a gun, Second Amendment idea, which is just, to me, notice that's the final decision, into something that's just as authoritative. Because remember, the purpose of all that was to alter or abolish this thing that we invented for ourselves called government, to do the bidding that we needed to be done amongst ourselves. That's now been occupied by people as an oppression. That we were supposed to be vigilant in our creation, and that obligation remains in us. The sovereignty is an obligation. It's kind of the sword of Damocles. A lot of people use that a little bit odd. They think it's like this impending doom. What it is, well, it's the realization of the responsibility you have when you take on, when you undertake to do something. Whatever it takes to maintain that is that sort of Damocles, that it's over your head, that if you fail, it comes down on you. And it's the fact of the realization of that responsibility that's inherent in you. The sovereignty remaining in the people is that inherent problem that we have to answer to. And it's not a problem. Like I said, you either agree to succumb and you give away everything you thought in your life and you give it over to someone else, or you decide that you do have that responsibility and to take on and choose to throw it off. And this is just international law again. This is the truisms in international law and how you deal with this. That I keep asking you to make that decision. I don't know where you are or where you're not, what interests you, what fires you up, what doesn't. But I do know if we don't focus on, if we keep entertained in this day, those that are working to make their outcome, literally just an outcome, it's not lawful at all, it's adjunct policy, are going to prevail. And it's so fast and so easy to kill it that it's frustrating to me that we are fixating on the too big a problem, it's just too big to try and destroy. And I'm suggesting to you, if you stop fixating on the big enemy, the thing that you think is there, and actually work on the cause, that boils down to people. And I can deal with another people, especially when I can identify them as a criminal. And it's taken a little while to get the confidence up and the certainty, because, maybe you could be wrong. But that's why we go to that bright line, and we call it the so-called law, even in the statutes. And if you look at it in the proper context, as I was explaining here, we were talking at the Mining Association at the very end, I was saying, this land disposal power, this power that the government takes, is not really a power in the point of control. This land disposal that I talk about, this law of the land, is an obligation of government. It's not a power to wield. It's the power obligation to conform the actions to the obligation undertaken. That when you look at it from that side, you realize the government is no power, and that any of its instrumentalities or agencies that come against that is making war on its establishment, and contrary to what the people have established. That it's that's why I keep suggesting to you so quickly. The answer is, it's not that much of it's not an argument. This is not an issue. This doesn't even go before the courts. This is a felony. This is a crime in progress that we were duty bound as a sovereign power, if you will, to maintain that our agencies and instrumentalities were doing our will. It was up to us to call it out. In fact, so much so that even in the statutes it says if you witness a crime and you don't tell it, you're liable. And you want to find that, just go look at, it's all written down, folks. I mean, for as much as we attack the government at all, the objective basis by which we can follow, for as tenuous as it can be in lots of ways, when it comes to basic property crimes, it's pretty straightforward. And when you see or harm against people, when you see a crime, you're supposed to arrest it. You're supposed to call it out. I even think that's biblical. If you see a sin, you have to call it out immediately. You're commanded to call out these things immediately. And you know why? I mean, it's a truism. If you don't, it continues and festers and gets worse. So it's always on us, even if you get away from these words called sovereignty. If we expect to have peace and tranquility, we have to stop the harm those of us around us that are harming us. And we try to make a system that in the best case, it's neutrally handling that, so that there's no, as we saw here in the chat room with Grimner sending out the biggest, baddest story of this year is that the Tesco grocery stores won £1.50 judgment for milk over someone who broke a milk because he was told to get out the store. No, I'm not going to get through. The point of the story is, what's the point of the $1.50? How much did it cost me to get that? Well, the point was, if you look at the story, how much the government got from those fines and fees for holding the case. That you see that the government itself becomes not neutral anymore, but an extorter, but opportunity taker. That you can agree to that or not, I don't know. But the point is that it's made the government now has become this thing that is not neutral. It doesn't work with us or for us. It's worked contrary to us, that we were vigilant and required to be vigilant in this thing, and now it's gone so far that we literally are in that war. These people are making war against us. That is a crime in this country, that if you don't call it out, and you could be called out for, and this is kind of interesting how I looked at this, but if you want to go to see this, go to 18 USC Section 4. And I just threw this into a coordination letter, of all things. Again, with certainty comes this supportive knowledge that this is not small stuff to do, that I have to be very sure in how I'm going to apply it, because I am ultimately responsible, again, for my own. I can't false witness either. We all know that as well. So I'm going to make sure that I have the proof for my allegations, but the responsibility to stop crime and arrest it is told to us in in Title 18 USC Section 4, and you're supposed to tell a civil or judicial authority or military authority, whomever it might be, you'll see it in that statute, I don't remember it, that you are supposed to make a report for that. And so I took the opportunity to do that in the last coordination response. This is like unheard of type stuff. And this is where you find yourself when you start doing this. When you take responsibility for the crime around you, you're starting to do those things that haven't been done for near ever. Why it's so bad today. And when you start to do it, you start to realize where the power really is, that it's in us outing the criminal. And we're only a witness to that. And this gets you into another aspect, and I won't get too deep, but I talk about it a little bit. You can get a little bit out of the Lieber Code, and I'll just speak to it in this sense, that you are neutral to it. You create that neutrality, and when you find out the government's not being neutral, you call it out. That's a felony. And so, anyway, it's funny how I have other things to talk about, and I'm talking about this, but I'm hoping you follow this point about it really isn't that tough to be a witness. It's not that hard. The obligation's on us in the so-called legal to call it out for good reason. That, again, if you're essentially an accessory to watch crimes go down. That there's been an interferer, an obstructor, an oppressor that sits between your good, peaceful world and that peaceful world, and it's in the government. The people that have insinuated into the government realized how to do it and got there when you were all, and me too, because this has just been a long-term observation. We're not vigilant to not let it happen, and so again, I guess the point here, we're going to rephrase the point. I'm noticing that we are paralyzed by our focus on this thing that's too big to beat. Let's say the government itself. And what we need to be realizing is we need to sit back and understand that we're in a war, and then we have to choose whether or not do we want to prevail in that war or not. It's being waged against us, and you can choose not to enter the battle, but that's the answer for you. If you don't enter into a territory that's being taken over, you're going to be living eventually that life that has been imposed upon you. Today is a much more, sophisticated day. Sophistry is not a good thing, and it's in the seats of decision. And it can be addressed, but it needs to be addressed. But you have to make that decision. Are you going to put your head in the sand and not admit that there's a war, even though they're telling you there's a war? Battlefield America is there, folks. It's real. It's been real. I just use these things to tell you it's in the news, and that's noticed to you. It's been there for a long time, if not for near ever. Any rate, so it's up to us to choose. You have to come to the terms with this. You really can't deny Battlefield America when the oppressor's telling you that. If you do, you've committed. You're committed to agree to walk with that, to be the accessory to it yourself, actually. And silence is not an answer. So silence is the victory against us. So that's the choice. I say long time, with don't buy, don't comply, ask why. I told you that was really just another rephrase, another quick little way that Karen Quinn Tostado was pulling out that was really compliant with and consistent with what I was saying, is that you need to step back, withdraw, step back, and rethink your condition, and then re-engage on that decision. That's the decision I was talking about. That I've noticed that people are being paralyzed by trying to fight something that they don't understand. And you got to go to the place that you understand first. So I'm asking everybody that is a great energy, and that's one of the things that got me focused more on this, was the meeting that we had, the Mining Association, someone doing a presentation. And it just struck me. I could not get beyond. It really bothered me that someone was saying that they were going to fight for something that they didn't think had a chance, when I'm sitting there knowing, well, we got a better option to do than to fight something that we don't know if it has a chance. And we're doing that because we don't know anything else, in some regard. And so this focus on something we really, it's not there actually, but focusing on it will defeat us before we get going. We become paralyzed to act against it. I'm asking us, if that's where we are, if we find an excuse, well, how do we do this, and what about that? You're already in the wrong position. You should grab onto something that you see is wrong and let the will to make it right guide you. Don't worry about really the bigger thing. And if it is a bigger thing, find something a little bit smaller. Find something you can handle. You know, I was talking, and this is with William Roberts. He had at the and I didn't get to talk to him right at the very end at all. But the city went after his property for taxation problems, which he didn't have the problem. They were, again, these were code violation problems, which were completely improperly put on him. And he went immediately to try and fight the big fight, and I suggested to him that was going to be too big, that the condition in that battlefield for him was going to be too much, too great, too fast, that he could fight that similar question on a smaller scale and lay the foundation for the greater argument today. That he started to see there's strategies and tactics you have to do in this. And as I said, I wasn't able to continue to talk with him after a while. I'm not someone that keeps on these things. Someone asks me a question, I give an answer, and I let it rest. I don't keep up on people. I hope that they're following what I'm saying and doing it correctly. So this is what our interaction late was. Just he'd ask me a question, I'd say, here's the terrain you're in, here's the laws that may come to bear, here's what your strategy might be, and here's the tactic that you're going to use. And then I leave anybody who brings that question to me to them. That once he started to orient the problem better, he started to get a handle on this big thing, this oppression, this plunder on property owners. And so there's a method behind it, but you're not going to do it by saying, well, how do you fight this? It's too big, or this is more than I understand. You just have to decide to understand. So let me get back over to the tabs. Let's not be paralyzed by observing a fiction, a fabrication, a perception that's not actually there, but we give too much power to, that really just keeps us from, we just obsess in that, and we never become functional against it, I guess is the point. We've got a lot of power in us, and a lot of knowledge, sitting there that's idling, and racing engines that don't find gears, that we really need to engage, and don't make an excuse around it. Don't use the excuse that something's too big. Find the weakness. This is all part of the strategy. Find the weakness. Where's the Achilles heel? That's a real big deal. So I was talking last week, I was telling you about this little good cop, bad cop in Israel, the Iran deal. That's becoming big news. Or it has been news here. And I said, be careful with this situation. These guys they're pretty sharp. For as buffoons as it sounds Washington's doing, there's an objective that they're not telling us, other than maybe there is none, and that's telling us a whole lot. But I said, be careful what they're doing here. Now that Obama allowed that so-called classified document to come out that exposes that Israel has nukes, that I said, be careful, that's not Israel's license now. And isn't it just interesting how immediately within that week we now have in the news Israel now attacking in this Yemen war, joined Saudi Arabia. Now we'd heard that the Saudis and the Israelis are working together. Well, here's the proof. If we had any doubt, it's over. And we're watching now Israel be taking a much more militaristic, well, they're actually doing it now out in the open. Right after these disclosures and the so-called negotiations agreements with Iran, which is not just the United States. It was many countries are involved in that. So there's also a lot going on inside of that. There's a lot of stuff between Iran and Iraq going on. This just starts to look like, Syria still looks like a target to me, and if you look, and I'm looking carefully without, again, not very deep look, but what I can have time to spend, Syria and Iran are not necessarily so connected, so certainly not as much as Syria and Russia. So looking between the lines and seeing what's going on and seeing what Russia's doing inside Saudi Arabia, this kind of problem. And then all of a sudden here within the week I told you, watch out now, this agreement with Iran with nuclear is going to give Israel license. You hear now the story coming out of something that was just breaking then about Yemen, but Israel fighters jets have taken part in Thursday Saudi-led airstrikes on Yemen. Sources in Sana'a disclosed on Friday. This is for the first time that the Zionists are conducting a joint operation in coalition with Arabs. I find this just interesting, what's going on. Now, won't get into any more of this. The point is that, for me, I'm looking at, this battlefield, America is battlefield world. And I've told you there's a mirror that we need to look at that's created in the United States for us, but it's being done over in the Middle East, that we in America, in our own battlefield, the silent battlefield, the invisible battlefild, have to know is going on in the things that are going on behind the scenes that are indicative of a very high-level gameplay that we're going to have to really pay attention to. That becomes part of my thoughts, though I don't, put it in the context of all, I don't break it all down to, because you can, the Sunnis and Shia and all these other groups and the non-is caliphate that appears to be, and then we find out it's all United States. These are all the dynamics and weaponry that they can bring against people. That I think they're really in different form bringing it against us here, that becomes, at least for me, part of the strategy that I'll use on a local level. In other words, you don't know a lot of times, but you understand that if these kinds of tactics are being done in the world, they're known. And as I told you, we are exploited. If we look at the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, that's your human frailty document in part. And if you don't take stock in that, you're going to be surprised one day. And my concern is always that maybe, not that I read it like the Bible, after I've read it twice, I haven't gone back. The point is that there's certain things that stuck with me. And one of the main things is don't think you know so much. Don't think the other guy's not sharper than you. And you're always looking for that. It's not one of those things you obsess over and keeps you as an excuse from acting. It's one of those things that you use to know, to make sure that your steps are true and with a foundation. And that's really the main key here. And it doesn't matter that we're not dealing in the Middle East for each one of us in the United States of America. It means that these government people have a plan, and this is just one of them. The one that we are addressing now for us in the Jefferson Mining District is another style of oppression, but it works by similar international principles. And this is what you're looking for. You're looking for those principles that are being used, and that identifies you. You want to know what jurisdiction you're in? Look at what principles are operating. It's really that simple. But to get to that knowledge, the thing that was kept transparent to us, those keys of knowledge that were withheld, as we see, in Luke 11:52, I keep referring you over to there in that Bible. Go read that. That's pretty fascinating. I found out many years ago. It answered to me everything I needed to know about what our problem was in this country with regard to the Bar Association. And it tells us something in there about the limitations that you're going to find And you're going to have to work that out, which I think I've been able to do somewhat, to the point now that something that never is supposed to happen, that a state's not supposed to defend itself, and it also proved it wasn't really the state, did not answer a lawsuit. That's unheard of, folks. I just can't tell you how unheard of that is. That these things that I predict, if you will, if you're just looking out and seeing how the dynamic is, that Israel's now taking a bigger, more obvious hand in things. And then you see they team up with the Arabs, at least Saudi Arabia, which I don't know. See, that's I think a lie. I think it's always been together. And we're there. The Saudi Arabia is an interesting creation as well. And so we got to be careful on how much we do here and how much credit we give. And it's the same kind of credit and do we have to look at when we're dealing with people around us, local to us. In the same week, folks, that I'm telling you, watch out. This deal is giving license to Israel. McCain suggests Israel go rogue, blow up Iran, negotiations by starting war. I mean, how much easier predictability do we have to see here than this McCain idiot? I mean, come on. That he's still in office? This is really a shame. And yet there he is, and there it comes. As soon as this deal goes in, he's saying, go ahead and go rogue, Israel. You got my permission. Well, that was understood before. He's just the mouthpiece. So here it comes. I mean, this is just writing on the wall, as far as I can see. These notices, I say, this is all graffiti in the news. Report, Israel jet struck weapons depot in Libya. They're in it now, folks. This is how obvious. They're in it. They're not. Israel is all over this thing. And, they have their reasons, and they'll make their reasons, but you can believe it or not. But this is a bigger, the game has gotten a little larger here, and in a very, very serious way. That, I guess on the surface of it, it's serious and dangerous and obvious, but that I want you to understand this level of dynamics is working on the people everywhere, actually, but more in particular because I live in the United States of America. I had aspirations to believe we were doing what we had, even though I didn't have a clue. I certainly appreciate what ought to have been a lot better. And now that I think that would have been going down that path is a whole lot better than where we were going and where we have gone. That I would, in my last decades here or minutes here, whatever happens, I don't have that day. I would rather not succumb, and I would rather step up and do what I can now, even as late in the game as it seems. And late is the race. I said, don't stop running that race, folks. You stop running, it's over for you. You never know, even if you're second, or you're so far behind you look like you're first. You don't know if anybody in front of you that's going to win is going to get that leg cramp. So you just got to run. And you got to continue doing what you're doing, one foot before the other, even though you don't know you can take the next step. You take it. The writing's on the wall, how serious things are getting. It bothers me to watch it. I'm just not this kind of a spirit at all. Whatever you want to think about that part, it's just not in me. That kind of a fight in the world, I don't have. To go and destroy other people and impose my thoughts on them. I really believe that there's something in having a property law that shows boundaries and limits. The commons area we can call like the highways, where everyone has the right to use and no one has the right to obstruct, not even the government, because it's obligated always. We haven't figured that out. Those that are in the government now have made a determination that's different, but those are those oppressors and occupiers. Those are those that substituted your government, the one that you thought was established. And if it wasn't established quite right, it's up to us to make it right. And I don't mean go address a constitution. I mean the locality in the countries of the United States of America that we call states now. These were countries, each 50 of those countries, that they had their own set of rules, and they had their own property laws, and they had the way they were dealing with it. That's been subverted. It's been substituted. Substitution, under international law, term conversion, means supplant. And supplant only can't say only, but it mainly deals with overthrows and occupations. It's a forceful even though quiet but forceful, contrary to the existing law, change. So, and again, Lieber Code reminds us, you knows them when you sees them. It's by their deed. When you saw it, you were supposed to step up, but we didn't. How really lowered our awareness is, that I say, let's raise that awareness and then make that decision. We find ourselves in battlefield America. What are we going to do about that? And to decide either to turn your head and not listen, is forget it. You've given it up. It'll come beyond you and your family. And if you decide to fight it, you can't then use the excuse, which doesn't seem like an excuse. It becomes this obsession. What do we do? We got to stop it. How do we stop it? Well, you have to sit back again then and, okay, make that plan to stop it. Stop whatever you can. I want to remind you now, with all this other issue going on, how this works and how we forget things so quickly, that Obama waived the ban on arming the terrorists back in 2013, September. I got a story. I just brought this in because as I'm reading through this Israel, how this thing is turning up in the Middle East, and anybody might have a question. The United States is fueling this whole thing. This was a plan. You've heard this behind the Woodshed before. I've told you this was the strategy. For as limited geopolitical view I have and look and interest at this point, actually, over what we're actually doing at home. I've got to fight the battle at home before I can go look at other people. But this same warmongers in Washington are warmongering around the world. And we can't deny that these things are there. And I don't want us to forget that Barack Obama has waived part of the federal law designed to prevent the supply of arms to terrorist groups so he could arm Syrian rebels. This is all still in play, folks, and nobody says anything. Congress allowed this exemption, so these are all the players. These are not representatives of you. The lawsuit sued the political parties. They didn't answer. They are making war on us. I can prove this in so many ways. I just need people to see that and then say, wow, okay, that's where we are. This is right here. And it's beyond me to go to war, but what am I going to do to be in this war? Because I'm in the war, whether I really wanted to do it or not. This is really kind of a simple discussion at some level. I'm either going to throw in some place or I'm not. And for those of us that say I'm not, I don't know why would they listen to me? Why would they listen to anything? Now you see quickly how television and radio is entertainment, and you obsess with it. It's your addiction that it keeps you from having to deal with what is in our own area, our own world, part of the world. Obama has helped this. The United States government is part and parcel to this. Why I told you, be very careful when you see agreements being made. You and me, we believe our word is our bond. Not so for government. Not so for government. And if you want to know about that, go read The Prince by Machiavelli. Shocking book. That's another one of those books. It just shocks me. I don't know why. It just does. There's a sensibility in me that's so violated that people would resort to that this guy was so genius to see all this, actually. I'm actually insulted in my own incapacity. Would I have seen what what Machiavelli saw to write that book, to become more in favor with the prince because it's dog-eat-dog world, and he made no bones about the fact of recognizing that and writing it down. He was not in denial. But that we as people in the world actually do that, it sickens me at some level. And I hope it's not good enough for you. And so that's my hope. Not hope and change, but the hope, because that's all I can do is just have an anticipation that there's something better that we want for ourselves. I've made the choice, I'm sure, in lots of places, in lots of ways, in the hopefully the narrow path. And I'm asking y'all that listen to me to spread that word out there that can. Just do what you can. Be that example. And don't make the excuse. And if you find yourself obsessing, well, what do I do? You're just too tight on fearing on it instead of realizing, having a better awareness. You got to sit back and think about it a little bit more, like they say, the cool of the day. Sounding a little bit more biblical today than normal, but these are the little lessons we see throughout these the truisms that we see in these books, whether or not they came out 2,000 years or not, or whatever, whenever they were made, I don't care. There's truths we find in lots of things, and I look for those because I'm not so smart. I've been working really hard to know and do and be what I guess I'm supposed to be, and in our best sense. And I hope we're all doing that. I know that there's a lot of people that aren't, but I'm not going to condemn that. I hope one day they see the error their way and move on, and they try to do better. There's a lot we put on us that cause us to do things we wouldn't want to do. We just have to, and there's not really a lot of empathy about some of that. And on the other hand, you can't give too much to the psychopath or sociopath, or just the one who wants to harm and hurt people just because it seems easier. So these things are in the news. This is something I look at, and I just use to apply it to my knowledge base, my experience base. I can't even explain to you what you would take away from this, but I think they're important to see. Maybe that's part of what I can't convey that confuses maybe some people or don't get what I'm saying. All I can say is that just means that you haven't certainly walked my path or done my things, but I'm going to suggest to you, if you would just do stuff that your stuff, your priority, your passion, one day you'll run across these. You'll have to, because they're pretty central to all these concepts, these principles that I speak about are core to what ails us in the world. So I don't know that it's too hard to get this. We just have to engage. That we're not engaged, I just say it this way too. That we're not engaged is causing our questions. Because once you get engaged, it's like when, I don't know how many people have been involved in this. It's maybe in a fight, maybe more people have been in fights with people. If you don't understand the one you're going to fight with, if they're not fighting with you and they don't like you, you don't really know what you're maybe up against. As soon as you tangle, well, you don't know what you're really up against, but you know you're tangling, and you know you better do something if you want to get out of that. And so that's the kind of distinction that I'm making. Once you engage, and hopefully you've done it with some forethought, and I'm trying to find ways to do it that you're not putting yourself at risk. And in particular, we're talking about the government here, so let's just keep it in that realm. It's useless for us to fight amongst ourselves anyway. But there's this oppressor in the government of coloring that you can deal with them in writing. That you establish records that keeps you out of risk and out of harm, and sets the record of their harm and their causation and their criminality. That you don't have to get so involved so much that you are at risk. And when you see that, that sure freezes up as well. But that's how we can address a lot of this. And we could bring some semblance of dignity, honor, respect, and lawful action, non-intrusive action for everybody. We can be that example that we weren't taught when we were younger, other than maybe our father and mother who were good and right as well. And also I say that way because, there's lots of people that really have been abused by the system that causes more abuse. It's this problem they point you to doing, but no one points the government that it's the abuser. I mean, when you get Obama arming the terrorists and no one says, whoa, and shuts it all down, you see, then they're allowed to do it. They say they have authority. Do they really? No one's really asked that, and I haven't had a chance to look at that. But as I just told you, Title 18, USC, Section 4, go read it. You see a crime, you got to go tell somebody. Now, whether or not it goes anywhere is kind of irrelevant at some point, but you don't have to stop there if you also know about certain remedies in law, about when the prosecutor doesn't do the prosecution, that you can continue. There's provisions for that. It shows you that it's not over because some government official in a seated decision that's an oppressor has an ultimate right. They have an obligation. And if they don't fulfill it, then that gives you your license to continue. And it takes a little bit of thought to work that out, but it's all possible. Now, moving on to what's happening with this terrorist ban, it started out with the war on terror. For us, it was the Patriot Act in writing, It comes like 2 minutes after the 911. Wow, that wasn't a signal for everybody. We have also the conditions. I think it was section 326 for the banking. There's a whole bunch of fraud behind that. No one called it out. At one time I was doing a bit to do it, but life got in the way, and that became less important to go up against a bank's excuse using, I think it is chapter 326 to impose upon you a presumption that you're a money launderer. But things in life got in the way and more important than that, and so I kind of backed off. But here's the fruition as we see going on and what they do with this so-called war of terror against us all, and why I keep telling you, get your stuff out of their banking system and stop using their banking system. France, and remember how closely behind Hebdo this comes, folks. Look how fast this works, and secretly and silently through it been going on in the United States, but this is going to come through to us eventually. And we talked about it last week, that you can, if you get $5,000 now through a bank account, they're going to be talking, the bank is going to be obligated to tell the IRS. Well, in France, same week, France bans the use of cash of more than 1,000 euro. So you can't, being someone, and this is an interesting story as well, if you are a so-called resident there, a resident of France, or I guess a national of France, I don't even know, I have to go look at their law, which I can't read, but I wonder what the status is that you have to be before this attaches. I just assume it's anybody who uses that fictitious currency in France currency, you will not be able to spend more than 100 euro, 1,000 euro, and before you're going to be under scrutiny. Now, there's interestingly, because tourism is so important to France, they're going to give an exception to tourists up to 10,000 euro. Think about that. Doesn't that just interest you? If it doesn't, I don't know. It interests me that these delineations are made and excuses are made. I guess tourists are not terrors. They're not presumed to be the terrorists. They're not presumed to be money launderers. But people in France are. Now, this is the same problem in the United States, but the numbers were 10,000. Now it's 5,000. We may see the day soon that $1,000 is what's going to be scrutinized, because you're presumed to be a money launderer. How do you like that, folks? So someone has to step up and argue and discuss that. Now, I think the answer is pretty clear, though. We just have to remove ourselves from that system. We have to extract ourselves from using the benefits of that debt-based system. We cannot be enticed into the inducements for something that system allows and gives and provides in order to capture you. This kind of feeds into that greed thing, even though it may not, because we are compelled to take some of these benefits by this very same system. Well, I've kind of said, well, we need to just get off the paper and move into silver coin at least. Now, the problem you'll see real quickly is you can't use that silver coin at its commodity value. You'll have to use it as face value when you go back and try to pay off something in the plunder system. They'll steal your wealth right there, showing you need to make a clean break. And once you start doing that clean break, and it's a long process, and maybe shorter for other people. It's been quite a long process for me to appreciate how clean the break has to be and where they get us attached. And then also, if you're still attached, maybe how you'd even discuss that you're actually not. That's an important observation that you'll have to make for yourself. But you start to cleave yourself from this corrupt plunder. And don't be as I said, don't walk with the ring in your nose as an accessory to the crime against you. And you start to see how pervasive this plunder system is, but you also see how you pull out of it and how you get away, and then that the reality starts to set in. And you have to make some decisions there. That certainly if you're not using banks and you're not using the currency and you're using silver money and you have a group of people and it'll take a large group, you still have to buy quite a bit that will agree to take your silver money for commodity price to buy commodities like and kind, folks. Then you're going to start to be able to free parts of this up, and that limitation won't matter to you, will it? You won't be induced to take on a liability you may or may not have understood was there in doing so. As I move on to tell you and show you, again, this oppression that's on us is in multifaceted. It's all over the place. It's every needful thing in your life is wanted to be controlled, and in a large part, it's assumed to be able to have controlled you. We get to the education now and this dumbing down that we're going through and the systems, and we can identify it now in a term. Lots of people can see this thing in Common Core, which I've told you before. It's been in benchmarks in state authorities, in statutes for decades now, this Common Core standard, which really is just to produce work units for corporate, for the state as an asset to the state. And that exposes now to you the financial bean counting construct as well. That the people that they educate to the level that they're going through these educational systems are going to be for an outcome, that outcome-based condition that will be used as an asset to the state and workforce productivity. There's an inducement by the government to do this, such that it was so great that, apparently unscrupulous people that you and I would have put on pedestals are teachers, folks. The real teachers. I mean, there was teachers that I had that they deserved to be on the pedestal for who they were, what they did, how they did it. The awareness and they would turn you in, the awe they would expose to you was out there. I really, looking back and what I can remember of those few, there was quite a few actually. It's really a difference than today. That we are educating people and inducing and enticing them to do things that they would have probably never done without the inducement and enticement. That we now have a proof of the intention of the government to allow people to make to allow people and incentivize them into doing things to promote what the government wants, to the point that they will get themselves in trouble. They don't even have the sense to not and to object when a system forces them into doing actions that anybody in their right mind would say this is not proper, to be getting a little bit more because their life is just that hard. Teachers are no longer paid very well in lots of places, and so this becomes it's like the FBI bringing the informant to 2 people or 3 people that would have no clue over what they're going to do, and then this is a good idea, too stupid to understand it, probably not, given all the tools to do nothing because they have no way to execute on it, and then the FBI comes in and calls them terrorists. This is the same thing we just happened in Atlanta. Cheating scandal teachers go to cells in handcuffs. 11 educators face up to 20 years in prison for inflating their students' test scores to get bonus money for their schools and for themselves. I don't even know what to say here, folks. This is the system and the rules that we're living under that people are trying to exploit. Why teachers would do that is really, I don't know. We could conjecture all day, but this is the system and the type of people we now have in the position of influence. And we talked about this problem here years ago behind the woodshed, as we were hearing of the incentivization of getting the schools to show better on the scores. Now, my question on this is, and when I read through the story of this, and it's just off of a news thing, Daily Mail, I don't, you don't get too much in here, but who was the one who provided the incentive? Who was the bankroller, and why weren't they put in jail? Let's see, the story falls off at that point. That there's a really big problem in the school system. These are the ones that got caught, and the report shows that this was very extensive. This is a very extensive problem throughout the systems. This is your school. This is your government education system. So again, no different than the money, the currency. You got to stop doing it. You really have to stop putting your sons and daughters in public school anymore. You necessarily have to, and I use the word advisedly, homeschool them. Make sure it's not your tax home. Just homeschool them. House school them, I guess. Privately school them. is better. And then you don't have to also fall into another system thing, the compelled vaccinations that are coming here, even for adults, if I get down that part of the storyboard. And that these systems, these people that are in charge, because the one that actually advocated this, well, she dies of cancer before they get to the point of the one that was advocating this payment to the teachers if they would scrub and change record reports so that the overall school actually looked like it was doing better underneath these driving need by the policymakers to make schools look better in the face of other standards. And folks, the end result is the problem. You know that they're now passing laws, they're now getting ready to pass laws that universities can now issue associate degrees. That used to be community college. This is how low, and I told you this behind the woodshed a long time back, this is how low the actual education level of your sons and daughters in public school is, that the universities are now given over to be able to, it's coming to the day that they can give associate degrees to students. Why? Because your high schoolers are coming out and they can't get into a university level, actually. They need to work through the university 2 or so years in order to get that associate degree to give them the right enough knowledge to get them into college. This is after high school. So, talked about all this. This is the slide into the stinking abyss that is the benefit to you for participating and partaking in the benefit of public education. You get to then have to be scrutinized by a Common Core. Data acquisition, that's a silent weapons or quiet wars issue, big data. You get to follow underneath some psychologists' idea of what education is, as at least in the minimum, underneath an agenda that they want you to do, and you get to suffer the mandatory vaccines if you want them to go to school, and then whatever that school just deems to be correct for you, and whatever clothes they want to wear, and the life that they're going to indoctrinate them in. And when you go to the schools and see the barbed wire, and or however they're doing the internals, and you got to have IDs to go in and out now. You can participate and have that benefit, or you can withdraw your sons and daughters and be done with it. Well, to the extent that you're protecting them, the government will still come after you. But the people who are in charge won't normally get it. I talked to you about the Lieber Code about why. Another example here: DOJ, no contempt charges for former IRS official Lois Lerner. She is still under investigation for a separate Tea Party targeting matter. I could care less about the Tea Party targeting. These are the types of people that are in. It's just notice to you the way the system works, and that she's not going to get a contempt from the IRS for whatever reason. They'll make their excuses. This is the the soldiers in the military operation that until they kill somebody, and even if they kill someone, if they can justify it by some thin thread of excuse, they will not get punished like you and me. And more evidence. I go on and on. I'm now back. I know I'm on to that. What I anticipated here. The FBI busts another of its own terror plots, and politicians rush to blame the First Amendment. This is the we could say the Hegelian dialectic. We can talk about all this stuff. This is just made up. I mean, we can give it some credit. This is just the opportunities that can't go undone. Unused. The FBI has been found out to be plotting and planning and creating all these terror events. They get unwitting and really unintelligent people that will just kind of go along and not think about it. They take advantage. These people are in law and government are opportunists. Picture on this thing is FBI foils the FBI terror plot. This is the ongoing thing. This is what's happened since 9/11, and I hear crickets. Here's, I guess, more evidence that you can bring together for you if you get fed up with this, and this is what really drives your car here. This is more evidence to pull together. Somebody writes a criminal complaint that was unsealed. You now hear how it gets done that you can pull together for yourself. You can be one voice forcing an opportunity to get more answers and to get them to reconsider how they're pulling this off. And if we don't, it continues. And you might think that you're immune to this kind of thing, and I might think that because I get so focused on what I do that there'd be little interest I would have to do anything. I'm even talking so much. Well, I have a secret. I have the secret answer to get to the get the answer from the government. I wouldn't believe anybody that said that. Like, what there a little bit I do. I've got the silver bullet for. No, that doesn't work that way. None of this works that way. But there's people out there that believe this over and over again, and so they're exploited. And so there's weaker people among us that we really have to watch out for, and we don't. And that's a big job. It starts becoming a big job. And the only way I know to do that is just to explain to more people, more things. Do it on a place, really do it in their question more than you need to tell them something. When someone has a question, you offer them a clear, thoughtful answer. Not more questions and not more. You just say, listen, you ask this question, here's that answer here. Here's where we see the objective basis. It's not opinion. This is what they've done. This is what they've said. This is what the law says. This is what they were supposed to follow. And that's it. And they let people think, give them time to think about this. This is a really big deal. I can't believe a lot of people would want to believe that the FBI actually does this stuff. Even though, how many times have we seen and heard that's exactly what goes on? That's telling you how insulated people are from reality. And that's another point of what is the reality. The is. You can't make that up. You're going to have to make that decision to look at it honestly. And like I said, my experience says we are in the battlefield they declared we were. I knew that before, but now any doubt is removed. And we're going to have to come to terms with that as a people. And if we don't, we're going to fall short of wherever the is. That is the part that's going to overwhelm us, because we just want to remain blind to it. It's going to be, we'll force the transparency of it to us. It'll be transparent to us because we don't want to see it. I'm kind of anticipating my tabs apparently, talking about pulling your little ones out of the schools and doing private schooling because they're taking the benefit of the public. The government is putting down, treating it like a herd, their property. It's bleeding out. These people are using every opportunity to take away any thought that you might have of self-determination and thought, even though we keep hearing that the sovereignty remains in the people. That's a notice to you that your obligation is to stand up to protect yourself, because there's no one out there that's going to do it. These agents that take an oath that gives you their ability to attach that they had some knowledge about it, but that doesn't mean that it stops the criminal from taking the oath and then being a criminal. You still have to be vigilant against that. As I tell you to withdraw from the system is making no place that it's not going to be. Why I keep telling you it's important to understand property and the limit. There's a boundary to all property. When there's not that limit, then there is no property. And the one that's the biggest, baddest punk and brute and force and gun-wielding thug and gang member is going to be able to win. So, it's breaking out. You heard it before with this measles thing. There's now and has been, this is probably the big deal for me, there has been in the works, and now you can see, because of what, you almost see this as the plan now, this measles outbreak, and then all of a sudden the call for mandatory vaccines, that since, I think this article says 2010, there's been a national adult immunization plan. There's a National Vaccine Program Office that implements this plan. I said national, folks. Adult, they think you're insects. So this is going back to Title 7, Title 21, the U.S. Code. I've talked about all of this kind of stuff over and over and over again. It keeps coming up. But what got me on this, I'm going to read something here. It's one page. For those of you that are looking to understand how you find them, and we can kind of identify them generally as these technocrats forcing technocracy, wanting to big data all of us, monitor us and evaluate us and control us ultimately, which means that you're property and they're in control. It's right there. If you want to understand how to identify them, at least the them that we sue to enjoin, the style of things, that the words, the terminology, this executive summary, well, it doesn't chill my bones, but it would chill my bones if I was kind of new to what we're doing. If I wasn't this more hardened war veteran in this aspect, it would chill my bones to read what I'm going to read to you, that I want you to listen. And I don't know how much I do this, and I don't know. I don't get too many people talking, conversing. I'm going to read something. I hope that's okay, that you don't mind that I read things. I don't mean the news, I mean some of this stuff. But I want you to listen. I don't know how much you pick up as I read. I hope I read it well enough that it's important. You'll get the link for this so you can read it yourself. But I want it on the record. A statement here that's not my words at all. It's the government's statement that in almost every part of the sentences, you are hearing the clues of the control system that's set up, that wants to impose even just this system that I'm telling you, you will hear and see in everything the government does. I want you to understand also, you're going to hear this date of targets of 2020. There's strategic plans that are in the world, all over the place. How wide this control has already been and is, that's up against us. How organized it is. That you have all of these plans that are the plan for 2020, the plan for 2050. These plans are these people. They're roadmaps to something 2020. They're roadmaps to transportation 2020. They go to 2050. They go to whatever. These people plan long term, and they have definite goals, and they do meet them. I think they've met every one so far. And we're just coming to the awareness. And I'm going to read this to you. It's one page. It's the executive summary of a 52-page document. That if you just listen to my words here that I'm reading from this document, whether you understand the importance of these words or not, you will hear the vocabulary used to defeat you. You will hear the vocabulary used speaking to those that are in the know, those place-based stakeholders and partners that work together to defeat you, that are putting together that have put together since 2010 a national adult immunization plan. And I think Gary L. popped this up in the Twitter. I'm behind a Woodshed if you want to kind of check that out. That this came through, and I started reading. Wow, this is the road. They talk about a roadmap. If you want to know who these people are and what they're doing, whether you understand the vocabulary or not, this is it. This executive summary, one page, says, executive summary, vaccination is considered one of the most important public health achievements of the 20th century and continues to offer great promise in the 21st century. Vaccines save lives and improve the quality of life by preventing serious infectious disease and their consequences. However, the benefits of vaccination are not realized equally across the United States population. Adult vaccination rates remain low in the United States, and significant racial and ethnic disparities also exist. The United States Department of Health and Human Services National Vaccine Plan, the NVP, released in 2010, is a roadmap for vaccines and immunization programs for the decade 2010 to 2020. While the NVP provides a vision for improving protection from vaccine-preventable diseases across the lifespan, vaccination coverage levels among adults are not on track to meet Healthy People 2020 targets. The National Vaccine Advisory Committee and numerous stakeholder groups have emphasized the need for focused attention on adult vaccines and vaccination. The National Adult Immunization Plan, or NAIP, outlined here results from the recognition that progress has been slow and there is a need for a national adult immunization strategic plan. The NAIP is a 5-year national plan. As a national plan, it will require engagement from a wide range of stakeholders to achieve its full vision. The plan emphasizes collaboration and prioritization of efforts that will have the greatest impact. The NAIP also aims to leverage the unique opportunity presented by the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. That's my input. Obamacare is what we're talking about here, and this has been implementing it. It's going on. The NAIP is intended to facilitate coordinated action by federal and non-federal partners to protect public health and achieve optimal prevention of infectious diseases and their consequences through vaccination of adults. The NAIP includes indicators to draw attention to and track progress against core goals. These indicators will measure progress against set standards and inform future implementation and quality improvement efforts. The plan establishes 4 key goals, each of which is supported by objectives and strategies to guide implementation through 2020. Goal number 1, strengthen the adult immunization infrastructure. Goal number 2, improve access to adult vaccines. Goal number 3, increase community demand for adult immunization. Goal number 4, foster innovation in adult vaccine development and vaccine-related technologies. Achieving the goals of the NAIP is facilitated by agreement on plan priorities and coordination of the wide range of programs that support them. The Assistant Secretary for Health serves as the director of the National Vaccine Program and will lead the NAIP and its implementation. In support of this mission, NVPO will facilitate collaboration and coordinate with the monitoring of the progress for the NAIP. Now, I made some accentuations of certain words. If you're into going back and listening, you'll hear all the terminology of the adjunct policy non-constitutional law imposition, which tells you the Affordable Care Act is just non-constitutional. Just the last sentence, in support of this mission. These missions are critical to understand when they're doing this. This is the game plan. They will facilitate collaboration. When we did our MMAC rejection, I told you those were alternative dispute resolution strategies, and facilitating was one of those felonious strategies. That this is in the summary of how this national vaccine program is going to be implemented. Notice the monitoring and progress. Progress is what this is a progressivism. Progress is what what they deem to be your future. Monitoring is a provision of the evaluation and monitoring that they have to do to keep track of how well their plunder is going on. They're telling us, when you look at the word terms as they are defined in that community, they're telling you that this is a plunder. They're going to use felonious, non-constitutional efforts in order to overthrow you, take out your standards. When they say they're going to increase community demand for adult immunizations, that was I don't have proof of this connection. I'm just going to say it this way. You take this for whatever you want. This was the Disney measles outbreak problem. They're going to force it. They've used it to create a demand from the community. The community is them telling you have to go mandatory because this over here, this measles, is what the problem is. They won't tell you that the vaccine was causing it. That's another way to increase that demand. This executive summary was really interesting. You see them talking about draw attention to track progress against core goals. Well, common core, that's where that's the same thing. These goals are going to be met, and the way they track progress is data. And you give it to them. So this summary was full. It was just pregnant, if I can say so, with the verbiage of the plundering oppressors. That any of you who are interested, who want to start to get an idea of what this terminology is, just needs to get this summary, just get this download and copy off the executive summary part, and then look, when you're researching, you take these terms, remember them, that you've seen. They're almost a stakeholder, vision, mission, benefits, or said you can take however, the benefits of vaccination are not realized equally across the United States population. What is that benefit, folks? They don't describe it here. What is the benefit? They talk about eliminating consequences, but we know that vaccines cause consequences. So put this in the context of the benefit is the bottom line. Is control. Is debilitation. Is possibly eugenics. And you're watching the government tell you the plan that's already been implemented since 2010 and is going to be engaged up until 2020, and I'll guarantee they have another one before then coming on, if they didn't reach their goals to make the benefit realized equally across the United States. It's really all in here. So this is for those of you that are really wanting to get and roll your sleeves up. When I read that, I said, well, this is everything we sued to enjoin. This is the things that we rejected in the MMAC rejection I talked about a couple weeks ago. This is that consensus-based mediation, facilitation, alternative dispute resolution-based strategies that are killing us, that are so easily defeated when you know about them and you know what you're listening for, and you come with what, folks? What do you come with? Since it's non-constitutional, it's non-law, it's non-property, what do you bring to defeat it? But the law, the Constitution, the property. And more importantly, to this point, for each one of us, people, is your antecedent rights, where, and I don't push the sovereignty aspect, where sovereignty remains in the people, dictating that the established government is to work for you, for you. That's why they say it that way. And it's not. And it's coming under a color of authority of health, which is a police power, which is actually a fraud, because they never actually define what they're talking about. They're talking in this it's a pseudo law. It's not even law. It's adjunct policy law. What's the word? It's adjunct policy language. There's nothing about it that's lawful. And this language you'll find. Look at consensus of policy networks. Just get on the internet and put all this stuff in. You'll find it'll just pour out of your computer. The ooze that it is. Look up the Udall network. It's all there. All these words are used in about every aspect of your life in every state I know of. This is how infiltrated it is, and it's become, and as simple as it was as simple as it is to defeat, is to step up and say, and you remember, you can't remain silent on your right to remain silent even. You have to step up and declare and assert how they don't have the right by showing that you have the property and right and they don't. That theirs is a lie, that theirs is a fraud, that theirs is an extortion coming out of the gate, it's a felony. That I think we have answers if we would just step up, each one of us, not worry about how big this, do I care about the government at that point? I'm looking at people that are implementing felonies. How do you defeat Washington? You show everybody that's coming out to come and get you as a felon. That's one way. And then you hope, if you're going to have people that are law enforcers around you, if you're not going to be bold enough to step up to do it yourself, then you hope that there's a sheriff around to arrest that one for committing the felony before you. That's going to be a good day here one day. We're working toward that. Finally get sheriffs to understand there's something more than their politics that they're actually having to deal with. And then when we come to the point where we see, 18 U.S.C. sub 4 says if we find that you're doing a felony and we don't declare it, then we're the felon, we're going to have to call you out too. So let's not go there. Let's just say that you're the law enforcement officer, you enforce the law, the objective basis, and you go arrest those people for committing the felony that they're committing. I think the day changes, folks, almost instantly at that date. And all we have to do is be knowing that it's there to do, and not be influenced to capitulate to some negotiated reductive or sentence of lesser action, that we take a lesser position. Because if we don't, they're going to come onto stuff like this that's going on right now. The judge won't allow a Connecticut teen to go home as she nears the end of forced chemo. See, this national adult vaccination program, treating you as the adult insects that you are. Again, they do these statuses. They don't tell you that you're maybe not. You haven't even thought about making the determination that maybe you're not that status. Maybe you're not what they're talking about. Like I said, you get yourself out of the homeschool mentality, or even the homeschool, but house school. You get them out of public school mentality. They all of a sudden can't deal with you, and they're telling you that. That's an answer for everybody that's asked me, what do I do? That's the answer. If you want to get out of the system and not be beat up by the system, you have to remove yourself from it. And there's a reason for that. It ends up being under the corporate capacity, which I don't want to get lost in. It doesn't matter that they're corporations. I've told you, any aggregate that gets together under one common purpose is a corporation. It's that simple. We, the people constituting a government, is a corporation. They call it a body politic. It's not some big scary thing. It's a fiction. But it was supposed to do what it was supposed to do. So if you create one of those, the only authority that has over anybody is those that agree to be in it. You're not in GM if you haven't been in GM, General Motors, or Government Motors now, excuse me. You're not in that corporation. You're subject to the rules. You're not subject to the regulations. You're not subject to the penalties or the benefits or anything. What they've done is blurred the line about how this is going to work, and then the corruption came on to deny everybody's ability, at least deny in the first instance, a felony, your right to say, wait a minute, I never agreed. And you don't have any evidence. The assertion that there is evidence is a fraud, and I've never agreed to any of it. You're taking a liberty, a presumption that's a felony against me. And then they produce a piece of paper, and what do? If it's a signature that you have on it, don't you just rescind the signature and say, oh, that was a mistake, rescind it, it's void ab initio from the beginning. How simple this stuff really is. Now, what you're up against, though, is a corruption against the criminals. That requires a little bit more thought. That's the war. But now you have a judge that's going to take this child from the parent. Those of you listening behind the woodshed, you've heard me define all these legal terms. They're not you and me. There's these legal fiction entities. It's like the ridiculous so-called issue about gay rights and marriage. All they are domestic partnerships under state corporate law. That's all those are. That's why they can give everybody equal rights. That's why I keep telling you, be careful. You think there's a gender in law, in legal? No, there's not. There's no gender difference. How can you have gay? That's just a political statement. And if you get inside that argument, you've abandoned the one that was supposed to, and living your life as if that's real, then you're not living your life in the life that you're supposed to have that's separate from that legal entity or its creations. Now, we get into being a child and a parent, you're already committed to the state property and subjecting that a judge comes in to tell you what to do. That even once the woman here is a 17-year-old girl, the woman is denied her right to self-determination. They give her the chemotherapy. Apparently it works. And she's still taking it. They won't let her out on the last little bits. Is just an evidence to me of what the future holds if you don't take this war against us seriously. On the other hand, you can be one of those that suffer the benefits of police enforcement, military beatdowns. Get shot 16 times, folks. Man awarded $5.5 million after cops accidentally shot him 16 times. You can go for that. You can go for that option. How about that? Dustin Theo Harris was shot 16 times by police. Folks, this has got to tell you something about being shot. Don't believe you're going to die, and you might not. Don't believe that can hurt you. The Matrix is not a movie, apparently. 16 times. I would have never thought you could live being shot 16 times. How big a sieve can you be now, folks, before you don't die? But Dustin got shot 16 times by police, but they say it was a big mistake. When Dustin woke up from a nap back in February 11th of 2012, 2 police officers shot him 16 times, but the cops say that they were trying to serve a warrant for somebody else. They just happened to think that Theo Harris was reaching for a gun when in fact he was trying to grab for his wallet. Why was he grabbing for the wallet? Because they asked him for his ID. This is just as bad or worse than the guy that shot the guy at the car in the back of his truck. They want your ID, so he goes to get it. They shoot. The cop shoots him. So this is the world. We can go ahead and not stop these police policies that allow this nonsense. Not force the education level to come up above just bare idiocy. Not allow these excuses that they give. I feared for my life. In this case, where it's not justified, they can't use that excuse. Why that isn't the policy and standard and guidance and law, I don't know, and it's only, and I guess I do know, it's because we haven't insisted as the ones that may suffer this mistake. Why? How does that happen? Are silent. The crickets, folks. It's not so much this week, not so much the frogs. They're out in the garden. The crickets, folks. 16 times and you might not die, folks. That's a pretty impressive thing to me all by itself. But should any of us have to face that at all? And it's $5.5 million. I mean, what is that? It's Federal Reserve notes of no value, more servitude. How's he going to get that out of the bank, folks? What did he win here? He just got more into the system. And this is the reality that we live, that we're tending to ignore, that I think if we have enough numbers, even if there's just a few, 2%, 3%, like we say all revolutions can start with 3 to 5%. I don't know about this time, but in fact, not the old way, in the new way. 3 to 5% of the population taking something important, making it important, and righting the wrong they see, I think will start to fix this pretty quickly. And a few of us grabbing the more formidable concepts and attacking right at the core of it, the heart of it, we'll do it even faster and more broad. But at least locally, you start that example. At least for you. This literally could mean your life or your death or your continued abuse. When you interact with these people, I've heard some of these things. You got to interact with these officials, these cops. The internet sends out a bunch of bad information that's very dangerous. You got to be very careful. That I'm going to move on here to talk about a writing that was put on quite a little bit ago, but I thought it was so important. That we, in dealing with these morons in badges, in political offices, and mere employees. And they carry this elite or this superior. If sovereignty remains in the people, how can they have any idea that they have any real authority? And that it only happens because the sovereignty in the people never steps up and speaks and says, wait a minute, there's a limit to your elitism here. There's a limit to your superiority. That we hear, these silver bullet answers and things and little tricks that we think we want to do, that I hear, and I see the YouTubes periodically, and there's another one now coming out for these traffic stops at the border areas. Very serious stuff. You need to know about some of this. I'm going to go through a couple of things here that you really need to correct in your thoughts. That there's this, on one side, there's this idea that says that you can demand that the cops identify themselves. And I've always cringed on this one. As I told you a couple times in passing, it all depends on your state law. It all depends. Now, your state law is their statutes that they have, these officers and employees in that state, are to follow. That's the limit of their obligations. That if in that statute it doesn't give you the right that you think, you don't have it. And if you assert the right you thought was supposed to be there and it's not, you're going to get yourself in a ton of trouble. And then you'll think your rights are violated. Because you didn't listen behind the woodshed to understand you got none if you don't assert them correctly, and or you do other things to condemn what you're doing. And then thirdly, that you let it come on you without stopping it. without actually taking notice. All these YouTubes and all these stories are giving you notice. It's happening in your backyard. This oppression is there, and if you don't step up, it's coming one day. I'm not fear-mongering. This is the fact. Look at what's going on. You can't go anywhere without having to deal with these punks. You can't be laying in your house sleeping, and they won't come in and shoot you 16 times as a mistake. He's a millionaire now, I suppose. He has to put cups all around him, though, when he drinks a glass of water, so he can capture everything that rolls back out of him. All the holes that he is now got in him. Yeah, that's what I want. That's the kind of world I want to live in. How about you? You want a chance surviving 16 perforations? But people think they can demand upon cops certain things, and I want to kind of touch this, because you need to understand that's not your argument. Let me just tell you this way. If it's a criminal that you're facing, do they have to show you their ID? And this becomes the reality. When you find yourself in a battlefield and you have to learn the terrain really quickly, and you meet up with somebody, you don't pick a fight with them real quick, because they may not care. And then you don't understand that they know what to say to excuse it. I'm amazed that they said that the guy's 16 bullet holes in him, the 16 perforations, said it was a mistake. That's pretty phenomenal. That doesn't really always happen at all. They just excuse it, don't they? You've heard that over and over. This is the notice I keep telling you about. Think you have a right to demand police identify themselves? Look closer. I thought this was an excellent question and story and exposure that I think everybody needs to read. Not that it's just more information I think you need to have. I said, let me just enter into the first paragraph, and then I want to add something else. Whether or not it's in here, I want to tell you something that's really obvious. It's really more beyond some of this thing. Many of us, it's in the statutes, but it's beyond. It's an obvious thing that they are when they approach you that answers all the presumptions against you that you can't rely on at some point, and certainly not to the point of argument to escalate the problem. You want to de-escalate the problem. You better come out with a better word in your mouth than, let me see your ID. Certainly, if that's the only thing you have in your mouth, then you're kind of messed up to begin with. But if they don't want to, you better know the law why, and you better be able to tiptoe through that minefield in order to force whatever you can or overwhelm them. And so hopefully you overwhelm them without the knowledge. But now that it's hit the internet, all those cops went and read what the limitations are, and they'll come back now and tell you about that. You better know better than that. But that's not the fight you want to do. See, that's not what you want to do. You don't want to get into a fight with a guerrilla moron. That's just not going to, an idiot's not going to help you in this. You're not going to argue with an idiot. You'll lose. Why? Because he's armed. Many of us believe that we can ask any police officer for their name and badge, and that a refusal to provide it's a violation of the law. We are often outraged when officers conceal their identity, especially when they are suspected of wrongdoing. But even when policy or legislation mandates that they disclose, officers rarely receive punishment if they fail to do so. And isn't this our question here? The remedy. See, there's no remedy on this one initially. And at the point of first contact, you're not there to worry about what their ID is, because if they can prove it, it's all for naught. When they get you down to not having to have a warrant and even being able to misunderstand the law but faithfully thinking they're applying it, you are in a day to forget what their name is. Let me go on to the second discussion paragraph here. Depending on your jurisdiction, which could be city, college, county, or state, officers may have no obligation to wear identification at all, let alone disclose it on request. Moreover, department policies... Here we are to the policies. Departmental policies that do require identification often allow broad discretion for an officer or commander to suspend the rule if they experience a threat, be it a present danger or existential, such as something later using that information to harass, or if they deem the prosecutor has already deemed you to them as you being the ham sandwich they can indict. So that's the start of this discussion. I want you to download it, and I want you to read it. I need you to understand this thing, but let me just tell you the very obvious thing. Remember the Lieber Code, and this is not just out of the Lieber Code. I just want to reference it because it's easy to go there. It says this in the statute. Harder to find in your own statute. You have to go look for it. But the Lieber Code says you know them by their deeds. You know them by what you sees. You know them when you sees them. And every state has what an officer for that state will have for identifying him without identifying the ID. Yes, some states say that you have they have an ID, and I've asked them for it, and they'll hand you a business card. And to tell you, and that's it. That's all they need to do, actually, as long as you can track them down. And that tracks them down. They're presumed to be in their official capacity without any constraint or restraint upon them at all, if they can say the right words to make a probable cause hearing or feel threatened. That what you are seeing is the evidence that they're a cop. That the little card they have in their pocket doesn't prove any more in law. When they are in a uniform, and they have the accoutrements, and in particular a weapon. In fact, this is showing you the limitation on government not being able to have a weapon unless they're told they can. That when you see someone with a weapon who professes themselves to be a cop, you're pretty much done at the point of the identification that they're official. If they're official. And so I've learned to do, you do want to be safe. Women, if you're being tracked, you want to do everything you want to protect yourself. When you don't know if it's a cop or not, we have those people that'll do that. But they're not that many, and they usually get caught relatively quick. You'll be your bad night. That's the first time out for this one guy, or girl now, woman wanting to do something, and then you become that victim. But go to the bright lights, track down a cop, get on your phone. Everyone seems to have a phone. Call the cops. Say, hey, I've got someone call it. I think they might be imitating a cop. Can you verify that they are? Get it on the record. Again, get it on the record. So on those cases, protect yourself. But for the most part, they're probably cops. And so you better start focusing really quickly on your point of first contact information. Like your bag of law stuff I keep telling you about. Be very careful on creating false shields and hopes and silver bullets for yourself. This is a critical problem I see. Everyone thinks these things are mandatory. Nothing is mandatory, and nothing can be expected but harm if you're facing a criminal, and more so if you're facing an official criminal. This is now causing some other things going on, I notice, getting over to the Border Patrol thing. Citizens defy Border Patrol by staying silent with video cameras. This is a serious problem. It really has nothing to do with the border except that you're being pulled over. You have to have a better word in your mouth than what I'm seeing these people at the borders doing. You have to ask the more legalistic, if you will, the more lawful questions. You have to get it on the record what they do and don't have. You have to know what the requirements are. You don't make an assertion like, I don't have to tell you who I am. You inquire as to the authority by statute and code that it pertains to you what is required, and they show you if you're going to say otherwise. Or you have a paper in your bag o' law, your binder o' law, or whatever in your head, as long as your memory is perfect, that you can assert on record. If you're going to have a video camera, this is the best time to do it, but they haven't done enough to be able to inquire. And you don't have to take their word for it, but you can't just say, well, I determine this. If you better have a law that says, well, the law says you can't do this. What are you saying that's not that is more consistent with the law than what I've just provided? Now, they've said that the border areas, which is almost, 80% of the population of America around the border, all the way around the border, 100 miles in, 125 miles in now, is a no constitution zone. Well, you can believe that, and it looks like it, but most of these people don't do this right. and they don't assert what they're supposed to do. They don't assert the right to remain silent, That perceptive oxymoron. But I'm looking here at a video that you can watch on this link. The no drugs or would-be immigrants were hidden in the sedan that rolled up to the Border Patrol checkpoint on a Southern California highway last week, but within 90 seconds, the driver was handcuffed. His 4-year-old boy was crying, and a video camera mounted on the car's dashboard captured the moment. Well, when I read it, I watched it, he's capturing the moment, all right. He did it all wrong. You can think you have these rights, and you have these rights if properly asserted, like the right to remain silent. But you don't have those rights if you haven't properly asserted them. And it's up to you, the responsibility is on you to find out which way it is, or to protect yourself in case there's an issue, a question between your opinion and that officer that has the force to throw you out of the car in 90 seconds, and justify it. This is as simple as the distinction between having a record that you can go after them if they do violate the law, or they realize, oh wow, this guy knows what he's doing, or this woman knows what she's doing, and I'm not going to challenge that. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. You're seeing 90 seconds, you're getting pulled out of a car, they've been told something. And the words that came out of that gentleman's mouth weren't quite what they needed to be. 90 seconds is not long to make a record, folks, I guess is the point. At that point, I could care less their identity. I better get it out quickly that they don't have a probable cause to stop, and that did come out, but not in that way. He's saying that he's saying that they don't have a cause, but he doesn't say it that way. He just asserts that he knows more, this driver, so-called driver. And he has a driver because I'll bet he has a driver's license. He's got a driver's license plate on the front, and that's identified him coming in. So, all these indicate, these flags are up for your servitude, and you didn't even know it. On a law that's very difficult to anticipate when you understand that they're sitting in a police power national security problem that you're going to have to defeat. And you have to do it in 90 seconds. I'm going to leave it like that. I want people to watch this. I want them to see it, understand the guy got yanked out of his car. He didn't get charged because ultimately they didn't. And they knew that. And ultimately he could, if he knew more, he could have defeated that in the first 90 seconds, that he could defeat it in court. And they know that. But they want to put the beat down on you and pass that knowledge over to you that it don't work. But you're going to have to suffer some harm before you're going to get anything. You're going to have to put that in your bag of consolation of whether or not you want to have that happen to you again. Now, this response on the failure to prosecute, if he knew more, could actually be an action. But because of the way it's approached, because we think we know so much, instead of getting on the record immediately that they haven't produced enough based on some law, some requirement in law that they meet, over what they think is supposed to be applied. Because if you listen, in 90 seconds, they are asking a question. There's a dynamic. The officer that's standing there, supposed officer, is saying something that's irrelevant to what he had to say first himself, which is what I would have went for the guy's throat on that. His omission to say the very first thing that gave him the right to ask me a question, which would have been the probable cause statement. Now, how does that, I can do that in 90 seconds, can't I? He asked his question. I listened to what he asked the question. I said, well, you haven't declared a probable cause to ask that question. I'd like to know your probable cause as required under the Constitution and your standard operating procedures. Why did I go there? Because policies is what these idiots are following. I haven't even read the policy and I'd assert that, because if I assert it and it's not there, they're a violation again. So, again, two critical things. You might have the right to identify these cops, and you should, but they may not necessarily have to tell you until it's better and safer and the situation's toned down. And as long as they tell you the truth, ultimately that's all you're entitled anyway. And then I didn't like the guy is right. He shouldn't have to do what he's doing, but that's not the world we live in. This guy at this checkpoint with this camera was, again, it's an object lesson of how not to do it. And how do I know that? Because he got pulled out of his car in 90 seconds, and he didn't make any good record about why it shouldn't have happened. That I just suggested to you, I can do it in 10 seconds. As soon as I hear his request, I'm looking for the failure. What steps did he miss before to get him to step, in my mind, is step 10? How did he get there without going through step 1? I'm going to question him on step 1. And if that's not good enough, I'll hit him with step 2. Because now I'm in a conversation, setting the record quickly as possible without speed talking. I'm just going to interact with them in a conversational tone about these limitations that he's breached. That I think, for me, and has been working experientially, folks, not my opinion, not as a silver bullet. This is a war. These people are soldiers, and they're waiting for the first opportunity to pounce. And you're going to give it to them if you don't do the right things. That they all know it is in their discretion, that you take that discretion away from them. You literally take that discretion, or at least you make a record that you've taken it away, and you need to know that because that's what your future defense and case is about. Because you're going to be up against these are literally organized criminals. And if we had any doubt about that, trial set to begin for 6 accused cops. If you don't think it's serious what you're up against, what these people will do behind the scenes, and what their gang colors allow them to do, and what this system of oppression that's been put in the seat of decision does, you can just get it from this. I know there's innocent until proven guilty, but we shouldn't. This is beyond the appearance of impropriety that these officials are never supposed to breach. That this apparently is one of the guidelines that breaches even the law of war, such that it's being implemented we understand in the Lieber Code. That the government doesn't like competition. The trial of 6 former Philadelphia narcotics officers accused of robbing drug dealers in a 42-page indictment that reads like a script from a Hollywood action movie is expected to begin in federal court on Monday. 5 of the 6 officers face life sentences for their participation in what authorities say is a corrupt organization whose members dangled a drug dealer from an 18th story balcony to get him to divulge the password to his computer. Others were beaten with a metal bars, according to court documents, and kicked detainees in the teeth. The organized government, criminals, syndicate, doesn't like competition. When the cops were taking stuff from themselves, that, if you go look at the Lieber Code, that affects the organization and the secrecy of the military establishment, which is a treason against that establishment, which is the death penalty. You'll read that as you read through the 157 articles. You'll get that in the Lieber Code. This starts to delineate the line. You don't go against your master, the military complex. The government, the official extorter, the organized criminal doesn't like competition. And 6 cops are going down because they wanted to use the color of authority to do so. No, I'm happy to see it, but see, it went on and on until they got him. And I'm going to remind you, be careful. This is the ones that got caught. The ones that are doing it more transparent are getting away with it. You're still alive listening to me. And maybe whoever's in the room with you. And so we haven't suffered this. That the record came up. American police killed more people in March 111 than the entire UK police have killed since 1900. If you don't understand, you're living in a war and people are dying. A total of 111 people. And this link was pretty cool. It has lots of links. You got to keep going through the links because it has the lists of all the people. It's all backed up, even though this was printed out on April Fool's Day. And because it had all the lists of seemed to be objective lists and on in depth, how depth this research was, I wanted to go ahead and add this, despite the April Fool's Day post date. A total of 111 people were killed by police in the United States in March of 2005. Since 1900, the entire United Kingdom, 52 people have been killed by police. Don't bother adjusting for population differences or poverty or mental illness or anything else. The sheer fact that American police kill twice as many people per month as people have killed in the modern history of the United Kingdom is sick, preposterous, and alarming. And that is your future, that's your current existence today if you remain silent. This is where it goes when the people don't step up into their responsibility. This is on us. And I hope every week I come to tell you where you can step up. If you didn't know, here's where you step up. These policies, these guidelines, the law, the assertion and charges against as I said, 18 U.S.C. Title 4, you see a felony, go tell somebody, get it on the record. You don't know what that might trigger. You don't know what else see, if everyone starts to, and I don't mean tattletales, I mean talk about government problems. Don't tattle against us and our neighbors. Go after these major failures in the system that do things, this is one of these things that just, I can't stand, and I was going to talk about it earlier, but I'm going to bring it in now, that you start allowing these systems, these corrupt systems, we get a little taste here and there that some cops are going to get charged. They're facing life. The juries are too ignorant as well to do what they need to do. So we suffer that as well. But these same systems, and every once and again we get to see that an officer, just enough to keep the pressure off, you think justice is being served, just enough to make you think that the system's checking itself, and then you go back to sleep. There are more and more harms on our side. The people that are being killed, the people that are being sucked up by that system, the people that are deemed to be a ham sandwich prosecuted by any reason by the prosecutors, these same attorneys, the Bar Association, that have given themselves immunities and licenses to do all kinds of horrendous matters, put people in jail that don't deserve to be there for all their productive life. Anthony Ray Hinton is thankful to be free of nearly 30 years on Alabama's death row for murders he says he didn't commit, and incredulous that it took so long. Hinton, the 58, looked up, took in the sunshine and thanked God and his lawyers Friday morning outside the county jail in Birmingham, minutes after taking the first steps as a free man since 1985. I won't go on. He spoke of unjustly losing 3 decades of his life under fear of execution and for something he didn't do. And now, what's interesting, he thanks his lawyers. This is the same Bar Association members that put him away. The judges and the prosecutors and his defense attorney. This is how wrong we have the perception of what's going on in this country. We lick the hand of our oppressor. That this man spends 30 years, and I didn't like the way that he says he didn't commit. No, there was no proof of it. That you are sitting right in here. You are sitting on the next, as we found out, any RICO statement by the government is you don't even have to do any crime. They just have to put you together with a preponderance of evidence of a connection to whatever they've said would be a conspiracy. So think about it, folks. Decide to step up, or really, you're just agreeing to be the criminal with the rest of them. Thank you for tuning in today, and stay tuned with all your networks, and appreciate everyone who has been tuning in, and pass out the broadcast. And you take care of yourselves and technicals, and God willing, we'll be here next week.